Shall we try and vlog this week as well? I think that might prove to be an alright idea. I'm not too sure, really. I suppose the big question following last week's vlog is, did an agoraphobic, socially inept Charlie actually end up getting to his friend's birthday drinks? The answer is yes. I arrived somewhat earlier than other people and bought a drink. Will recommend White Nancy beer to anybody who happens to be in the Cheshire area. It's a local brewery. If you live around these parts, you'll know what White Nancy is. This is White Nancy. It's big and it's white. If you're ever in Cheshire and you come to visit me, we might walk up there sometime. Up until about 20 minutes before it was due to start, I was questioning going. I even made myself a cup of tea, and then I said to my sister, if I'm going, I need to leave now. I don't know why I made a drink. And then I felt like it'd be somewhat mean for me not to go, having missed about 18 years of his birthday celebrations. I spoke to nobody. I listened and eavesdropped to somebody else's conversation, and yes, they might have noticed, but I was writing down what these people were saying in order to use it in another book. So that was a success, really. There were some people from school there who I didn't speak to, and then after 2 hours, I just gave up. Not speaking to anybody, just having a few drinks and being sat in a corner was just too reminiscent of how these socially awkward things go. And quite honestly, you reach the point where you're questioning, is it because I'm not making an effort, or should I always have to be the one trying to make the effort to get on with these people? And I was on a table on my own because I'd arrived before everyone else. And then there were 4 people who came in, and they were stood in the doorway. And rather than come and sit with me, I know that I didn't know them, but like in this environment, you're not going to know everybody who's in a bar, in a pub, that sort of thing. And yet rather than sit with me, they stood by the door, and I just thought, do you know what? I'm not here for this. Why am I wasting my time? I could be at home reading. I could have been at home watching television for the night, not walking around in the freezing cold. And I know that it was my friend's birthday and all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, if he wants to meet for drinks and do that again, then we'll do that. But this was not the environment for Charlie. So I left. And I came home and I had the cup of tea that I had left earlier. I microwaved it. I got home about 11:05, so night out for Charlie really went well. And then I wrote some of the final Doris book. This morning, I awoke, and there was no hangover because I didn't drink enough to promote that sort of behaviour. I had a cup of tea whilst filing my tax return, which was great because I didn't earn enough in 2018 to 19 to actually qualify to even fill in my flaming return. I'm still currently reading A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier. Just to say, all my thoughts on A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier can be found in my unpicking video from earlier this week. So, yeah, there's probably not going to be much mention of that book in this vlog. I've read to where I'm supposed to read to in Nevernight so that I can discuss this with Abby of Abby Mac Reads for tomorrow. I am enjoying Nevernight for the most part. It's a different style than I'm used to, but the footnotes and everything reminds me of Terry Pratchett. Otherwise, once I've finished A Single Thread this week, I'm not sure what I want to read next. I was worried about the fact that I hadn't read 20 plus books like I had last year in January. But if we remember, last year in January, I didn't booktube at all. I went to ground, I didn't write, I was still dealing with the concussion from the head injury, and so all I did was listen to audiobooks for about 3 weeks until my head was feeling better, and there were a lot of audiobooks because I'd accumulated Audible credits. I can't compare the two really, as in I can't compare 2019 to 2020 because they're completely separate years and completely different things happened to coordinate why I was reading so much. These are just exciting times aren't they, to be living in? You will probably be seeing this hat a lot this week because I am not washing my hair in between days. Sorry about it, but I'm not sorry. My brother's already joking that I'm getting the same hairline as my father. Someone didn't recognise me at work yesterday, a customer who has been coming in for 4 years. Can't help but question whether it's because I look so much older now. I looked at myself in the mirror the other day and I saw how sallow my skin looked and I was disappointed. But this is what happens when you live in the north and you don't have the perfect skincare regime.
It's Monday. Watched Doctor Who, which I hadn't planned on doing last night. I'm finding myself increasingly disappointed with Doctor Who. I'll admit that when I was younger, it wasn't my favourite show in the world, although I did used to write fan fiction for it, some of which you'll be able to find on the internet. Indeed, there was a story with the Doctor Who Project, a well-known fan fiction site, but I don't believe you can access it anymore. I just find every episode disappointing. I think the characters are great but underused. I feel as though there's this really large habit of bringing in more characters that are unnecessary to tell the story when you already have a very strong cast there. Some characters are getting pushed to the wayside in favour of education. Stories can be educational and entertaining at the same time, but most episodes of Doctor Who currently feel like a PSA. This isn't an issue in terms of being issue-based television. I get that, and I get that it's a kids show at the end of the day, but I can remember being educated by kids stuff as a child and not noticing it, whereas I feel a lot of the time now everything is just about being educational over being entertaining. And I don't think it's a problem with this woke culture and woke generation that some people have a problem with. I think that we can all be a bit more thoughtful about others, but as I say, that's not my problem. I hadn't planned on watching the show, but then it was on as I was eating my tea, so I watched it. Then I planned to go and read a single thread, and that didn't happen because Jessie of Bow Ties and Books had responded to one of my comments on their video. I commented about how one of the books, is it something like Let's Dance on Doomsday? I want to read that book. The premise reminded me of And After Many Days by Joa Ile, which, if people remember, that was one of my favourite books of 2018. Therefore, I want to get that book. But also, after that, I saw the announcement for Blackathon, which happened last February. If you remember, I also took February off last year because of my concussion. I was still a bit ill with it last year. That's also the time I started with my upper respiratory tract infection. Honestly, the start of 2019 was full of illnesses for me, which was one of the main reasons that I wasn't around these parts. I didn't participate in Blackathon last year. Again, I commented on that video, but I will reiterate it here. When I first started this channel, whenever I have been blogging, my entire reading life as an adult has been spent trying to read more diversely. This comes from a place of enjoying other writers' voices than the white, westernized literary canon that we are so often shown, and I feel as though you miss out a lot of the world, similar to what Jessie says in their video, by only reading one type of book from one nationality, one background, one history, one culture. And I used to read a lot more widely and a lot more books by black authors. It's shameful of me to be using Blackathon to be getting back into reading black authors, but I think that I only read Black Leopard, Red Wolf last year.
I am just jumping in here to say that last week's Charlie was a bit of a dumbass and an idiot, because I didn't read just one book by a black author last year, which, as I mentioned, is Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. And I'm not here today to say, as look at me, I read all these other authors as well. I'm here just to say that I didn't want to neglect these authors by not mentioning them again, and it's very much felt like I was trying to silence these authors and the fact that I'd read them by not mentioning them here. Indeed, as we know, I only keep my favourite books or books that I think I'll reread. So I'm just going to mention a few more of the books here that I read last year. The first one is one that I borrowed from the library, which was My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, which I thought was dark, funny, and I just never got around to buying a copy. Next, we have Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. I'm very apologetic for pronouncing that incorrectly, but this is a book that, as I mentioned, I did struggle with last year, but it talks about spiritualism and the body in such a fashion that I've kept it. It's worth a reread. Jessie recommends that I listen to the audiobook to try and get something different from the novel this time round. I also have The Half-God of Rainfall by Inua Ellams that I talked about a lot last year. It is one of my favourite books of last year. This epic poem that gives voices to the women that mythology has so often abused and neglected. Heads of the Coloured People by Nafissa Thompson-Spires made it onto my favourite books of last year. It is a short story collection that I absolutely adore, and I think that people should go and read because this writer is doing stuff with form and storytelling that keeps the reader interested whilst also having a literary quality, which isn't something most writers think about nowadays. And then I had The Perseverance by Raymond Antrobus, which changed the way that I thought about poetry. I have so often said that poetry is all about the sound, and this gives me a completely different perspective on that and shows that maybe I'm not as inclusive in my work as I ought to have been in the past. But still, I don't deny that it is shameful that I only read 6 books by black writers last year. And I do want to change that going forward. And even if I don't manage to read all of the books that I have planned to read during Blackathon, I have to remember that reading black authors, reading more diversely isn't something we have to do 1 month out of the year for a readathon or to fulfill some sort of challenge. It is something we should all be looking at more, because whilst we might be enjoying the books that we are reading otherwise, we are also only allowing ourselves to see one traditional certain way, a certain form of storytelling, and by accessing other writers from different nationalities and different backgrounds, not just black writers, but writers from across the entire world, then we're going to see different ways of storytelling. And as a writer, that is something exceptionally thrilling because it causes you to look at your form and causes you to think more about your prose and the way you're presenting a story to people. Even as a reader, you're accessing stories that maybe you've wanted for years and didn't realise that they were actually being written. And that is one of the reasons why I definitely want to participate in this readathon, but I am still not hiding the fact that I feel ashamed about the fact that I didn't read more widely and more diversely in 2019. Oftentimes, I think we just think about reading books by, well, personally, I think more about trying to read more books by female writers because I know how underrepresented they are in literature, but there are so many other underrepresented voices that I am then neglecting by not reading more widely. And so I just wanted to come in and add that to this vlog.
So when I saw that video at 8 o'clock last night, I ended up going and researching. I found an entire array of graphic novels and comic books that I want to read, but I've been unable to find. Ended up watching a short film about Malika the Warrior Queen. Then I found an entire list of black and African books that are coming out in 2020, which I need in my life. I went searching for all of them and realised a lot of them I won't be able to find, so they're saved to Twitter for me to look at a later date. But I do have some books set aside already for Blackathon. I also had planned to read Patsy by Nicole Dennis Benn early this year. I just haven't got around to it yet. I finally turned off my computer at about 20 to 10, and that's when I finally started reading a single thread again. Last night I realised that I have actually finished the first chapter of the final Doris book, which makes me feel incredibly glad because we're back to the 12,000 word mark. It means we can move on. I keep having more ideas about this story and where it's going to go. It's more difficult for me to write because it's a lot more plot heavy than previous books have been, but it is a big culmination of not just these books but events that have been referenced outside of the 3 Doris books that we have now. With the 4th and final one, we are going back throughout the entire 50 plus years of the protagonist's marriage. That involves various scrapes, alliances and enemies that they've made along the way. And so I have to keep that in mind whilst writing. I do know where the story is going. I am looking forward to either chapter 2 or chapter 3. I can't remember which one it's down as in my notebook, but it's all based around one time they closed all the public toilets in Macclesfield. Exciting, thrilling. I know. As I have now talked for nearly quarter of an hour, and this is just a vlog, I'll see thee tomorrow.
Please excuse the mess behind me. I am getting parcels and packages ready and also want to tidy this area today. Last night, I finished reading A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier. I completely forgot that my sister was going on holiday. I think I said that yesterday, so she's there. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be walking along the canal because for some reason last night I went dizzy. I woke up a bit dizzy this morning. My brother's been ill all night, so hopefully we're not all catching a bug. But that seems to be all I ever talk about in my videos, the slight chance that I might be getting ill. But I feel like it's an ever-present threat during winter. So I'm still waiting around to hear from Abby about whether we're going to be reading any more of Nevernight, how she's getting on with that. But I don't want to force anything because, as we know, Abby was ill. And I haven't decided what my next read will be. I have The Thirst by Yo Nesbo here, and I keep talking about getting back into these books. And for the most part, I know that they're quick reads, but also I feel like I want to be reading something slightly more literary. So I do have a few books on my shelf that would fulfill that. I will probably see you tomorrow. Yesterday, I did not get the opportunity to record because my nephew was down from Northumberland. So I spent yesterday playing Tig, playing with farm toys and some very large metal Tonka toys that I had bought him. I went out for my volunteer's birthday drinks in Poynton before not really getting too inebriated and travelling to Congleton to visit my grandmother. I didn't update you yesterday, but rest easy in the knowledge that I didn't read anything else. I haven't started anything new since I finished A Single Thread on Tuesday, and I'm behind on my reading of Nevernight by Jay Kristoff that I am buddy reading with Abby of Abby McReads. This morning I got up with the best of intentions. I don't know whether I can still call it morning because I woke up at 9. Earlier this year, so not that long ago at all, I asked people on Twitter for video ideas, and a few people got in touch, and I noted all of them down with the intention of making one video that encapsulated every single one of these videos. But it just can't happen because there are too many good video ideas here, so they will all, some of them are going to be done together, but for most of them they're going to be done separately, except for the ones that came from Emma of Emma Rosen Books, who said to make a fort out of books. And I'm just going to say that my bedroom is already a fort made out of books. They're on every wall at this point, and so I'm saying that counts. Being completely honest, it's great to spend time with my nephew. He is a completely different child with me than he is with anybody else. I think that with other people he's more feral, more willing to fight, but I'm not about that. But he's still rambunctious, it's just with some thought there. I forgot to show you that when I was at work on Monday I found a copy of Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King and Oyinkan, and it's water damaged, so we were throwing it out, so I asked if I could put a donation in and take it. So I've taken it to give it a bit of a read. It's a hefty term, so I'm probably not going to get to it this month. I watched Jessie of Bow Ties and Books do their, I think it was the best books of 2019 video, but it could have been a different one. If it had a different title, I apologise, and I will link it in the description. There is one book that Jessie has talked about a lot on their channel throughout the last year. I decided I had no choice but to go to Amazon and purchase it. That book is Let's Go Swimming on Doomsday by Natalie C. Anderson. This book follows the 16-year-old Abdi whose brother is taken by Al-Shabaab. A few years down the line, Abdi and his family find themselves taken by the CIA and forced to infiltrate Al-Shabaab. But whilst there, Abdi discovers that his brother is now a true believer and then ends up embroiled within this community. It sounds very much like a double agent style thing is going on. It still has family and brotherhood at its core, and so when I heard about it, I knew that I had to read it, despite the fact that I'm not giving you the best explanation now. However, I will say, go over to Jessie's video, watch it and hear their thoughts, and I really feel like this is going to be a new favourite after listening to them speak. I find myself in awe of Jessie's channel. Sometimes it's as though I can be the tiniest bit intimidated and scared to make comments because I just feel like they are a really thoughtful and considerate reader, and so I end up thinking that any of my thoughts might be null and void. So I was wary of commenting for the longest time, and then I can't remember which was the first of their videos I commented on, and then I commented. I think it's immediately like when you want to make friends with somebody and you're too scared to say anything in case of offending them or it going wrong. And so sometimes I get this anxiety about communicating with other booktubers in case I just look stupid, or whether they happen to have seen my videos in the past and just dislike me, which everyone's welcome to do, so I say it all the time. But Jessie has responded to my comments and seems to be relatively kind, and I don't know why I was that worried to comment in the first place. I'm still completely in awe / intimidated by just how flaming amazing their channel is, but that's on me, that's not on them. I also went with After the Flood by Kassandra Montag because this was yet another book that they recommended, and I think it was dystopia set on a flooded world, once again discussing family. It was discussing a father running off with an eldest daughter, a new daughter being born, and I thought that that sounded like a book that I might enjoy in the long run. As we know, I do tend to like books dealing with family. I don't know what it is, but there you go. We'll see if I enjoy this one. I do like the idea of this world being surrounded by water, and with everyone disagreeing about climate change all the time, it might be a way for me to throw my 2 cents in. But also, I don't know whether it still is, but when I purchased this the other day, it was on sale on Amazon. And whilst we don't want to support their practices or anything they're doing, I couldn't find Let's Go Swimming on Doomsday on any other platform. Otherwise, I would have purchased it elsewhere. Also, for the first time, not gonna lie, I was impressed with how they packaged these books because they didn't end up getting damaged. So, someone was doing something right somewhere. I've been here a while, my tea's getting cold, so I'm gonna go and drink that. There's no electric in my house because we might have failed to put any money on the meter. If you haven't already, then please do go and check out Jessie of Bow Ties and Books channel because I find them mildly marvellous. The other day, I said I didn't know whether this vlog would make it online. However, I've decided that I'm going to finish things off here. I recorded up until Thursday and then didn't record on Friday or Saturday. On Friday, when I arrived to work, the bin men had left the skips in the wrong area where somebody else in an office upstairs likes to park their car, and rather than risk them getting annoyed with me for the fact that they are unable to park in their parking space, I got out of my car, moved the bins, and when I'd done that, I just thought I don't have the wherewithal to get back in my car, start recording. I want to go listen to music inside. And so that's what I did. It makes no sense, but there you go. On Thursday, so the last time I spoke to you, I went to the library for the writers group. And at the library, I picked up some books. So firstly, I will start with a book that I have been waiting to come back into the library and thought that I had another fortnight to wait. And that is The Night Tiger by Yangsze Choo. And this edition is signed. And do you know, I find that very upsetting that a library got a signed copy, because why can't I have this beautiful book in my life? I mean, I've not read any of it, it's just very nice on the cover, isn't it? And because I can't be bothered trying to create my own blurb, let's read one. In 1930s colonial Malaya, a dissolute British doctor receives a surprise gift of an 11-year-old houseboy. Sent as a bequest from an old friend, young Wren has a secret mission to find his dead master's severed finger and reunite it with his body. Wren has 49 days, or else his master's soul will roam the earth forever. Ji Lin, an apprentice dressmaker, moonlights as a dance hall girl to pay her mother's debts. One night, Ji Lin's dance partner leaves her with a gruesome souvenir that leads her on a dark trail. As time runs out for Wren, a series of unexplained deaths occur amid rumours of tigers who turn into men. In their journey to keep a promise and discover the truth, Wren and Ji Lin's paths will cross in ways they will never forget. I've been hearing about this book for a while. It is something that I've wanted to read. So I started reading the first 2 chapters on Friday night to see whether this was a book that I wanted to be reading for cozy reading night. When I started reading this, I was a bit captivated by the style. And then I will find it specifically, where is it? It's on page 4. Page 4, I was removed from the story immediately when the character was discussing their hair and said I'd spent years growing it out. I felt like growing it out is very much an American term. I don't hear that elsewhere. So immediately I find myself pulled out of that story then. And so I want to go back into it, but I'm also scared that I'm going to find more Americanisms in here. I understand that the writer is a 4th generation Malaysian of Chinese descent, as it says on the back. And it's not for me to say whether it's too American there. But that was one thing that did pull me out. So I didn't then end up reading this as voraciously as I imagined I would. Then I got Himself by Jess Kidd from the library. This is Jess Kidd's first book. And it's a book that I have been avoiding reading because I adore The Hoarder. I adore Things in Jars. And I didn't want to have nothing new left to read by Jess Kidd. Mahoney returns to his hometown to find answers to a mysterious death of a girl who died however many years prior. And there are also ghosts. It's a weird mystery / magical mystery, weird. It's like Scooby-Doo and the Addams Family mixed together, and I adore it. I adored The Hoarder, I adored Things in Jars, and I know that this is going to be similar and that I'm going to love this too, but it's going to be the last thing I have to read of hers. And then because Jen Campbell's recommended it, Lauren and the Books have recommended it, and loads of other people have got behind this series now, I found Blue Monday by Nicci French, and this is the first in the Free Decline series. I don't know what it's about. It's another mystery series. I should have read this by now because I am a fan of mysteries and all that, but I just haven't got to this one because back in the day I always used to think that I primarily wanted to read cozy. I didn't think there was anything for me in other crime novels, whilst this is a style I like to see. The police procedural or the modern detective thing is something I like to see. I always thought I preferred cozy, and then by the time I wanted to read this, there were that many books out. It takes a lot to choose to get into a series because you know that you're going to be stuck with these characters for a long time, and that comes from speaking as a reader and a writer. So I'm looking forward to reading all of those. Then Saturday we had cozy reading night, and there will be a cozy reading night vlog, so I'm not going to talk about that here. And that is my week. See, isn't it nicer when I stand up tall, sit up tall? I don't know. If you have read any of the books I've mentioned or want to discuss your week as well after I've took you through mine, then please feel free to do so in the comments. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.